Professor Swinburne, it's very nice to be here with you. It's a great pleasure. And perhaps we should kick off by explaining a bit the change in the outlook in the philosophical religion over the last decades and your own contribution towards that.
The first 1800 years of Christianity, theologians, philosophers have always claimed that there were good arguments for the existence of God, though of course not everybody needed them. Many people were just prepared to trust the local priest or had some deep religious experience themselves. But then two great philosophers came along, Hume, who was a British philosopher, and Kant, the German philosopher, who said that you couldn't have any good arguments for the existence of God. And that influenced a lot of modern philosophers. And then Darwin came along and said that the whole of the natural world was that the humans evolved by perfectly natural processes and God had nothing to do with it, so there wasn't any need of God. And this atmosphere rather pervaded the next 200 years of philosophical thinking. And one movement, especially in Britain and America, which influenced philosophers, was the logical positivist movement. This claim, that was prevalent in the middle of the last century, associated in particular with, in Britain, the name of A.J. Ayer. This movement claimed that statements were only meaningful if you could verify them, that is to say, if you could immediately check them out, and therefore to say there's a chair here was meaningful because you could come into the room and see there was a chair there. But since you couldn't show there was a God or show there wasn't a God, not merely did this mean that you couldn't show it, but it meant that it was meaningless. It didn't have any meaning at all. And that influenced quite a lot of people, and it certainly influenced the main philosophical tendency of the period from about 1940 to 1970 in Britain and America. The feeling was that this subject wasn't a subject for serious discussion, it was a lot of meaningless talk. And even as some people admitted that they could, to some extent, understand what it was about, they thought one couldn't sort of argue about it, it was just a matter of private personal convictions and there wasn't any truth or falsity there. And since then, however, various philosophers have been rebelling against this. And obviously, logical positivism is wrong for reasons that have nothing to do with religion. Because the problem for logical positivists is they seem to rule out any serious science as well. Because you can't prove conclusively that there are atoms and electrons and quarks, but you can have good evidence that there are atoms, electrons and quarks, and so on for any of the deeper conclusions of modern physics. And so the logical positivist verification principle came to be watered down a bit, saying that, well, statements were meaningful if you could have only if you could have some evidence for or against them. But of course, if it's watered down that far, then many people, including myself, wanted to say, well, certainly you can have evidence for and against the existence of God. And I have spent quite a large number of years arguing that there are, in fact, good probabilistic arguments for the existence of God. That is to say, there are arguments of the kind that are used in science or historical inquiry, where certain evidence suggests that very probably there is a God, but it doesn't show conclusively there's a God. And if my claims about this are right, then of course the existence of God and more generally the claims of religion are on a par with science and to be discussed in just the same spirit and by arguments of the same type, and that's what I've been campaigning for many years.